I think the IMF is definitely scared of Bitcoin because they are a fiat organization. For those people that don't know, they have their own shitcoin. It's called the
SDR.
Yeah, SDR, Strategic Drawing Rights, which means they can just kind of print their own money out of thin air too. But with Bitcoin, they're irrelevant, or they need to adopt Bitcoin. It's their choice. Either you adapt or you die. But I think there's another darker angle here, which is they're basically a loan shark. Their job is to lend money in perpetuity to countries like El Salvador and, developing places around the world. And this kind of puts them out of a job. So I think they had to fight for that, or they wanted to save face, because remember, they made a big stink about all the Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador, that, you're going to fail, it's dangerous and whatnot. And when they're wrong and they're incorrect and the metrics prove them incorrect, vastly incorrect, I think they need something to save face. So maybe they insisted on these concessions just so they can say, yes, we got something.
Samson Mow, CEO of Jan3, says the IMF is losing its grip as Bitcoin threatens the traditional financial system. For decades, the IMF pushed fiat currencies and kept developing countries dependent through loan conditions. But Bitcoin offers an escape, decentralized, non-inflationary, and free from manipulation. El Salvador's adoption defied IMF warnings, and is proving successful. Now, the IMF is scrambling to stay relevant, pushing for regulations to regain control. Mow believes this shift marks the beginning of a broader movement away from IMF dominance toward true financial sovereignty through Bitcoin. Make sure to stick around until the end of the video as Samson shares more mind-blowing outlooks about the current market.
Also, if you enjoy listening to crypto-related content, please show your support by liking and subscribing to this channel by following the link in my bio, and get access to my free daily crypto updates and expert predictions direct to your inbox. Each newsletter contains on-chain data, forecasts and expert predictions. All of this is available free of charge. It only takes a moment to sign up and you can always change your mind later.
Now back over to Samson Mow.
The whole way that government works right now is very flawed. And I think about this a lot because I work on a game set in the future. So I'm trying to think, how does government work in the future? And there are differing schools of thought. Some Bitcoiners think anarchy. And, it's just a free-for-all. I think you still need some structure in place because there will be bad people that do bad things, and you need to be able to deal with that somehow. And I think there will still be a need for relationships with other groups, like diplomacy. So I think there is some role for government, very scaled back, very administrative, not prescriptive in many ways, and based off of some sort of foundational codex of laws that's far simplified and mirroring a bit of Bitcoin. So consensus-based rules where to do something, you need a supermajority to consent to it. So there is no war, no emergency act, no martial law able to be done without active consent of people. So that's probably somewhere we go, but definitely Bitcoin will change that relationship because they can't print money, they can't take your money, so they just shrink naturally. And I think this is a good thing because most of the problems we have today is the government is trying to do everything. It starts out slowly, but as you give people free stuff, they want more free stuff. And it just spirals out of control where you have some of those things uncovered by the Department of Government Efficiency, which is the Treasury was just paying bills indiscriminately to terrorists too. So it just becomes a big machine that lives off of its own bureaucracy. The feedback mechanism is elections. So you get feedback every 4 years. Yeah. And people have very short attention spans and memories, so they forget, and then you re-elect them again. That's why Trudeau was elected twice.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sad, but Bitcoin gives me hope that it will break this system. So Bitcoin fixes this, and especially with the talk of the strategic reserve in the US, that changes things a lot. So the ETFs changed the conversation. That made it easier. The Trump admin coming into power and formulating this path to a reserve has made it easier yet again for us.
What do you think happens to the price of Bitcoin if the strategic Bitcoin reserve thing does go through in the United States? It looks like it's going to happen on the state level before the federal level.
Well, as Adam Back says, that's the path to 1 million.
$1 million Bitcoin, Samson. When's that going to happen?
My guess is it's going to be this year.
It's going to be this year.
You look at all the factors that we're facing. You have
That's a 10x.
Bitcoin has 17x in the past. There is no upper bound to Bitcoin. So there are people that talk about diminishing returns, right? But if it's a step change, just like the failure of the German mark, it's not a gradual thing and there's no upper bound. It's just gone. And you use a new thing now, right? It's like, yeah, we don't use horses for transportation anymore. You know, we came here on a car or on airplanes and whatnot. So we used to use a new thing. And Bitcoin is that new thing because it's 100, if not 1,000 times better than anything else we've used as money in human history. But back to the point, what do we have? We have MicroStrategy buying non-stop. We have ETFs, which are a doorway to legacy fiat money. If you go back to all the previous bull runs, where we get bogged down is the exchanges, because that's the touch point, right? That's how you convert fiat into Bitcoin. And if you remember back in the old bull runs, it was like Kraken's backlog for KYCing people was 3 months long. Coinbase, same thing. That's the bottleneck, because to comply as an exchange, you have to KYC everyone, and you don't keep 1,000-person KYC team, right? You have to keep a team that you can feed, and you can't scale it up that quickly. So that's kind of where it tapers off. But with the ETFs, there is no bottleneck anymore. Central banks can buy ETFs. So any demand for Bitcoin can now be satiated without any problem whatsoever. And that is really big. That's why actually I thought 2024 was going to be the year we hit 1 million, because I don't think people fully understand how big that is. Central banks can buy ETFs. There is no barrier for fiat money entering Bitcoin. But I think this year we'll hit it, since we missed last year. But you have MicroStrategy, you have ETFs, you have the removal of the barrier, you have nation states, and what else? There's just so much going on, like real adoption of Bitcoin. So I just can't see it not hitting 1 million this year. And the other thing is, you see a lot of people predicting prices, right? They like to be cautious and realistic and say, yeah, it can get to 150. It can get to 200. It can get to 250. Because I think they want to sound reasonable. Nobody wants to be the crazy guy saying it's going to 10x, like me. They want to be, you know, I'm a serious person with realistic projections. But Bitcoin is not a realistic thing. It's a zero-sum game. Either you're going to use Bitcoin or you're going to starve. So it's all or none. And when you get to different levels, like when you get to 100K, when you get to 100K, it's different, right? When you get to 200K, the world again looks very, very different. Just close your eyes and imagine, what does the world look like when Bitcoin is at 500K? That's, you're reaching half of gold's market cap at that point, you know? That will demonetize gold if it doesn't get demonetized earlier, because there's talk of, you know, the US selling gold to buy Bitcoin to fund their reserves, because that would take out their enemies who have been accumulating gold for the last decade, right? But disregard that. Bitcoin is sitting at 500K. We are the second largest asset now, behind gold. It's a very different landscape. And at that point, do you think most people would still want to sell their Bitcoin to get fiat? Or would most people now insist on being paid in Bitcoin? I think it's the latter. So from there, you just 2x.
Yeah.
And then you're number one.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to access my free daily crypto updates and expert predictions direct to your inbox.